The Inner Laboratory. Welcome, traveler of shadow and light. This is the myth of the fallen ones, a place where the forgotten languages of fire, dream, and soul are spoken again. I am Elnad El Kasmenaay, and together we walk through the ancient art of alchemy, not as superstition or chemistry, but as the living scripture of transformation. Here, the work is not an idea, it is a breath. It asks for honesty, for patience, and for a courage deeper than comfort. Each episode is a descent and an ascent, a remembering of what the world once knew and then forgot. In the previous chamber, we walked through the three principles: sulphur, mercury, and salt, the trinity of being that binds spirit, soul, and flesh. We learned how passion, thought, and form dance together in a divine rhythm, sometimes in harmony, sometimes in conflict. From that dance arises the human mystery, that we are both the experiment and the laboratory. Now we descend deeper into the true inner sanctum, the chamber of the heart, where the fire never sleeps and where the great work continues unseen. One, the inner laboratory. The ancient masters built their furnaces from clay, stone, and brass, but the true forge was always human. Every breath you draw is an experiment, every heartbeat a pulse of transformation. The human psyche is the hidden crucible where heaven and earth meet to remember themselves. In the outer world, the alchemist tended to physical fire. In the inner world, he tended to the fire of emotion. Fire is feeling, raw, bright, and dangerous, capable of both destruction and renewal. The vessel is the mind, the container shaped by thought, focus, and belief. The element is experience, the substance offered to the flame. When these three interact, they create consciousness, just as heat, pressure, and time create gold from stone. If you look inward, you will find that furnace behind your ribs. You can feel it when anger rises, when joy floods through you, when grief collapses into stillness. That same light that burns within the stars burns inside your chest. The cosmos does not live somewhere beyond you. It repeats itself through you. Every sorrow and every delight, every hunger and hesitation is the echo of the great experiment repeating itself at human scale. The first secret of the inner laboratory is that everything is material. Fear, envy, tenderness, boredom. These are metals waiting for refinement. What you reject most fiercely often carries the richest ore. The furnace cannot transmute what you refuse to bring into it. The second secret is that the laboratory never closes. You work even when you sleep. Dreams continue the experiments you began in waking life. An unfinished conversation during the day reappears at night as a symbol. The work never stops, because the soul never stops seeking coherence. The third secret is that no one else can tend your fire. There are teachers and mirrors, but the flame responds only to your attention. If you neglect it, it smokes. If you worship it, it blinds. But if you learn its language, it illumines. The balance between devotion and discernment defines the true scientist of the soul. To enter the laboratory is to accept solitude, not loneliness, but the noble solitude of one who dares to meet himself without disguise. The world outside thrives on distraction. The work thrives on precision. When you begin to listen inwardly, the noise of the market fades, and the deeper rhythm of existence reveals itself. The slow hum of creation tuning its own instrument, and that instrument, in truth, is you. The laboratory you walk through daily, your thoughts, emotions, and sensations, is the most sacred temple you will ever know. 2. The instruments of the soul. The ancient texts spoke of the tools of alchemy, the athanor, the alembic, the retort, and the crucible, but these were metaphors for inner faculties. The athanor, the furnace that maintains constant heat, is patience. Without patience, the work collapses into despair or violence. To hold steady in uncertainty is to imitate the stars that burn without haste. The crucible is the heart itself, the vessel large enough to contain contradiction, the only chamber where opposites can coexist without destroying one another. Joy and sorrow, faith and doubt, desire and restraint, each must share that same space until they reconcile into understanding. The alembic, the glass retort where vapors rise and condense, is the reflective mind. It takes raw emotion, lets it evaporate into symbol, and returns it as wisdom. Meditation, contemplation, and dream are all forms of distillation. Finally, the philosopher's stone, so often imagined as a physical object, is none of these things. It is the alignment of all instruments. It appears when the heart is steady, the mind is clear, and patience endures. When the instruments tune together, the work sings on its own. Discipline alone is not enough, and neither is love. The work requires the marriage of both, the precision of science with the devotion of prayer. The flame must have boundaries, and the vessel must have warmth. Emotion is not the enemy of reason, but its collaborator. Feeling gives heat, thought gives form. Without heat, form is dead. Without form, heat is chaos. Together they generate life. Each experience tests these instruments. Praise examines humility, failure examines endurance, and desire examines wisdom. When you react unconsciously, the vessel cracks. When you observe with compassion, it holds. The alchemist's old motto, solve et coagula, dissolve and recombine, describes this process perfectly. The mind dissolves rigidity, and the heart recombines what was scattered into new coherence. The true experiment is not a spectacle or miracle. It is attention refined by love. In the smallest choices, the breath you hold, the word you choose, the silence you keep, the work proceeds. Every restraint that protects truth, every surrender that honors life, feeds the fire without consuming the vessel. 3. The experiments of transformation. The work unfolds through a series of inner experiments, each one testing a principle of transformation. The first experiment is confrontation. The alchemist must face the substance of his own life and name it honestly. He must look at the lead of ignorance, the mercury of volatility, and the sulphur of unchecked desire. Naming is the first act of transmutation, because what is named becomes knowable, and what is knowable can be changed. The second experiment is containment, the art of feeling without reacting, burning without scattering ash. Containment is not repression, it is reverence. It allows emotion to mature into insight rather than explode into repetition. Just as the furnace must be sealed for heat to transform matter, the heart must be sealed by awareness for experience to yield wisdom. The third experiment is circulation, the returning of refined material to the fire for further transformation. In human terms, this means reflection. What you felt yesterday, reconsider today. What once wounded you, look at again with steadier eyes. Each circulation reduces impurity and increases clarity. The process can seem endless, but it mirrors the rhythm of the cosmos itself: expansion, contraction, and renewal. The fourth experiment is union. After countless distillations, the opposites no longer fight. They begin to converse. The shadow informs the light, the body teaches the spirit, and the mind bows before the mystery it once sought to command. This is rubedo, the reddening, the dawn of integration. It cannot be forced. It arrives like spring, earned by endurance and invited by sincerity. In all experiments, three qualities sustain the work: patience, discipline, and surrender. Patience keeps the flame steady without haste. Discipline maintains the form without rigidity, and surrender allows the unknown to reveal itself. Together, they compose the triad of true heat: steady, intelligent, and transformative. The danger of the laboratory is not failure, but pride. Inflation tempts the experimenter to believe he commands the elements rather than collaborates with them. But the work punishes arrogance with smoke. Clarity returns only through humility. The masters of old began each day by bowing to the flame, not to worship it, but to acknowledge its law. Heat reveals truth, and truth burns away pretense. When you enter anger with awareness, it becomes energy for change. When you enter grief with compassion, it becomes depth. When you enter joy with humility, it becomes peace. The elements obey attention just as matter obeys heat. To live this way is to turn every day into ritual. The walk to work becomes pilgrimage, the washing of hands becomes purification, and conversation becomes the exchange of elements. Life itself becomes the experiment, the daily practice of heat without haste. 4. The Living Covenant. At the end of every operation, the alchemist sealed his vessel and watched the colors shift, black to white, to yellow to red, until the work declared itself complete. Inwardly, this moment was not an ending but a covenant, a pact between the finite and the infinite. The agreement is simple. You tend the fire, and the universe provides the fuel. You offer honesty, and it offers revelation. You surrender falsehood, and it reveals form. This dialogue continues endlessly, giver and receiver, vessel and flame, student and teacher, each contained within the other. To live by this covenant is to recognize that every challenge is an invitation to refine. The argument, the illness, the loss, each brings new material for the furnace. The work does not promise ease, it promises meaning, and meaning glows brighter than comfort. When patience feels impossible, remember the law: heat without haste. A flame that burns too quickly consumes its subject. A flame that burns too low achieves nothing. Transformation demands the exact temperature of awareness, warm enough to melt resistance, cool enough to preserve form. To the untrained, the laboratory of the soul seems ordinary: a mind, a body, a few emotions. But to the initiate, it is a cosmos in miniature. Every neuron is a spark, every heartbeat a bell, every thought a breath of elemental wind. The laboratory is not hidden in monasteries or temples. It is alive in the home, the marketplace, in the silence after conflict, and in the breath before forgiveness. When you begin to see the pattern, you stop demanding spectacle from the divine. You understand that revelation often arrives disguised as routine. A glance, a sound, a pause in traffic, each becomes a glyph of communication between you and the great work. Life itself is the philosopher's dialogue, constantly asking, "What are you becoming through this?" The alchemist eventually understands he was never merely human. He is the intersection of laws, the meeting of sulphur, mercury, and salt, animated by the breath of the cosmos. In his stillness, the stars adjust their rhythm. In his compassion, matter remembers its source. This is not metaphor, it is participation. To live consciously is to collaborate with creation itself. Closing meditation, the flame within form. When the experiments end, there is no applause, no thunderclap of enlightenment, only a quiet steadiness. The vessel cools, and the light still burns inside. You realize the work was never about becoming extraordinary. It was about becoming accurate. The philosopher's gold is awareness unalloyed by illusion. It is not power, it is presence. It shines in the way you listen, in the way you touch the world without demanding reward. That is the treasure that cannot tarnish. The universe is an unending experiment in remembering itself, and your life is one of its chambers. Each emotion is a reaction, each thought a catalyst, each act a distillation. When you attend to them with care, the cosmos refines itself through you. So keep the fire honest, keep the vessel whole, and keep the work alive through patience, discipline, and surrender. The great work is not somewhere beyond the stars. It breathes in the space between your heartbeats. Heat without haste, light without arrogance, presence without performance. As above, so below. As within, so without. And so the laboratory endures, silent, luminous, eternal.